you sneak in.
Sneaky Olivia.
No.
Hi, everyone.
Well, we're going to get started because we do have a awesome table talk from four awesome women today. So first of all, just want to say welcome to the First Tuesday Tea, and we thank you for joining us. And before I introduce the women, we want to say thank you to Casey, who helps coordinate the Zoom meeting or the Zoom facilities every Tuesday and helps send out emails. And also, we want to thank the Women's Service Board, who is always um, willing and able and capable of helping us coordinate the first women or the first Tuesday tea. And a big thank you to Isabel Ridgeway Foundation, who sponsors the first Tuesday tea, who we could not do without them. So I would like everyone, if they could, to mute while the ladies are doing their readings. And when they are finished, we're going to open it up for questions and answers. So today, I'm excited to have the pleasure of presenting four awesome women presenting Kitchen Table Talks. We have Keya Crenshaw, who is a native of Columbus. She's an actor, a culture curator, a business owner, and a writer. We also have Patricia Wallace Winbush, who is a respected actress and director on the Columbus in the Columbus theater scene. We have Chiquita Mullins-Lee, who oversees arts education programs for the Ohio Arts Council. And we have Tyiesha Radford-Shorts. She is a writer, performer, arts and community advocate, educator, and speaker. So we want to say welcome. We thank you. And I will turn this over to you, ladies.
Hi, everyone. I'm Keya. Thank you again to King Arts Complex and to Lynn Logan Grimes for coming up with this idea with me, and to Linda for taking over and helping us through this. It is our pleasure to present Women in Mourning. All I hear is the phone ringing. See, all this time has passed, but I'm still numb and in shock, because still all I hear is the phone ringing, and all I hear is the husky, familiar voice on the other end saying words no parent should ever have to hear. But in the year 2020, words Black parents hear all too often and have. And you never think it's going to be you. You never think you're next, but you are. See, they don't know what to do with us. They can't. Didn't Audre Lorde say, we were never meant to survive? And this seems like an old record, just the same thing, just over and over and over again through millennia. And Lord, but does it feel like we've been here before, since 2009, since 1955, since 1619, since before, still since 1526 and 1492, it was 2020. More than 401 years after the first officially documented ships of enslaved Africans landed on these shores. But as I've said, we've been here before in no official capacity, of course, because we're still considered less than a whole person with no certainty of a future. And that's the thing I think of most, of Breonna's future that was stolen from her. Do you know what? That girl used to call me at least once a week, asking me what ingredients to buy to make chili. Yes, she used to call me at work all the time. Just got the whole office just laughing, like, if this girl just don't write down this recipe. I tell her too, baby Breonna, please just write it down, because this is really ridiculous. But she just liked talking to her mama. See, My daughter, she often spoke of becoming a nurse, buying a house and starting a family, a future. I think about everything else too, yes. Of her bright smile as a little girl playing double dutch with her friends, school ceremony, our phone calls, our motorcycle lessons, the joy she received from her job as an EMT. We were so excited because Kenny said he was going to propose. She had a future. I'm sorry, you keep asking me to do these interviews. People keep asking me to do these interviews, but is there space? Is there space for me as the mother of a 26-year-old Black woman murdered while she slept, not bothering a soul? Is there space? Apparently not, because here we are, Friday, March 13th, 2020. Kenny calls me in the middle of the night. He says, somebody kicked in the door and shot Breonna. I'm dead asleep. I don't know what he's talking about. So I jump up and I get ready and I rush over to her house. When I get there, the streets just flooded with police. There's a million of them, and there's an officer at the end of the road. And I tell her who I am and that I need to get through because something had happened to my daughter. My daughter that I carried in my womb, my daughter that I labored for 18 and a half hours to bring into this world, an emergency C-section at 16 years old. My daughter, she had a sparkle in her eye, an old, beautiful soul. She lived and loved by the sounds of the blues. Last $2, Johnny Taylor. Where did this child come from? You gone and sing your song, baby. My daughter, she had been here before. See, this police officer, she tells me I need to go to the hospital because there was 2 ambulances that came through, and the first one took the officer and the second one took whoever else was hurt. So yes, of course. I go down to the hospital and I tell them why I'm there. The lady looks at Breonna and doesn't see her and says, well, I don't think she's here yet. And there's something about the way she said yet. I wait for almost about 2 hours. The lady says, well, ma'am, we don't have any news of this person being on the way. And so I go back to the apartment and I'm able to get through the street a little more. And when I get up to the apartment, it's still taped up and roped up around. And so I tell the officer there that I need to get into the apartment, that something was going on with my daughter. He tells me to hang tight. He tells me, hang tight. He'll get a detective over there to talk to me, to hang tight. And it takes a little while for him to come over and introduce himself. I don't remember what his name actually is, but he just goes on to ask me if I knew anybody who would want to hurt Breonna or Kenny, or if I thought they were involved in anything. And I go, absolutely not. Both of them got jobs. They go to work. They hang out with each other. That's about it. I ask where Kenny is. The detective tells me, hold on. I'll be back. Hold on, hang tight, be easy, just chill. But I still don't know what has happened to my daughter. It's about another hour or so before he comes back. He asks me if Breonna and Kenny had been having any problems or anything. I say, absolutely not. Kenny would never do anything to Breonna. And then I say, where's Kenny? I need to talk to Kenny. The officer says, well, Kenny's at one of our offices. He's trying to help us piece together what happened here tonight. But we're out there for hours and hours, and I still don't know what has happened to my daughter. It's kind of chilly. I leave, I get coffee, and I come back, and I'm still standing out there just waiting like a bystander, a looker on, as if my daughter hasn't just been murdered, as if my daughter isn't just laying there a few feet from me, covered in her own blood, bleeding out alone with no promises of a future. It's about 11 a.m. The officer comes over and says, they're about done and they're wrapping up. We'll be able to get in there once they're finished. And I say, but where's Breonna? No one. I still don't know what's happened to Breonna. Why won't anyone tell me what has happened to Breonna? He says, ma'am, she's still in the apartment. And I know what that means. Fast forward, because that's all I can do now is fast forward. Time no longer makes sense. I see everything in fast forward. Fast forward to 2021, to the time period where my daughter's murderers have walked away without a scratch. barely a scratch, and yet all my nightmares are filled with knowing her last moments on this earth were of pain and torment. And the worst part is I can see it so clearly. My baby's body just riddled with bullet holes, just 5 shots, 8 shots, 12 shots. Nobody's math adds up, but it doesn't matter because as far as I'm concerned, 1 shot is one too many. Multiple shots to subdue someone who was asleep, to stop someone who was asleep. My baby's body sat there for hours and hours in a pool of her own blood, cold and alone, and for hours, me not knowing my daughter. It has been almost a year, and I still can't find the words. Friday, March 13th, 2020, almost a year, and I still can't grasp what has happened, because to say my child was murdered while she slept soundly in her bed by the police, by those who supposedly have taken the vow to protect and serve, they kept asking me whether I knew someone who wanted to hurt my daughter, but they did it. They kept asking me, they kept trying to pass the buck, but it was them, they did it. And the entire world saw it, and yet I still can't find the words. But in all honesty, what can be done with my words when my daughter has done? What can be done? What can be done with my loss, my fight, my perseverance? What can be done? What can't be undone? And see, there's that thing about time again. It's unforgiving. We've been here before. Those 5, 8, 12, too many bullets in my baby's body. You know, sometimes when you feel a cold breeze move past you and around you, I wish I didn't know what it felt like for that same cold breeze to move through you as well, to grab your heart and shake your bones. My daughter, a mistake, they said, the wrong house, a mistake. My daughter, when I named her, I never imagined people around the world chanting Breonna. Breonna, her name, breaking news, Breonna, a rallying cry, Breonna, the image of every Black woman in the world, Breonna, hashtag say her name, Breonna. Kids scream and holler when they need their mother, but I scream and holler too because I need my daughter. But should I truly wail? Should my chest open up and I allow the words and sounds to walk the great migration up the back of my throat and spill out? Should the anger and pain and rage and sadness I truly hold and push way deep down into my depths just so I can make it through the day, should that erupt, it would blow this country off the goddamn map? My daughter. And I understand the need for peace. And yet I understand the anger. Breonna was everybody's sister and daughter. As easily as this happened to Breonna, it could have been anybody's child. So the mayor calls me again. People are getting antsy, and he doesn't want them to set the city on fire. They're tearing up the city, and he wants me to come and tell the people to stop it. I don't do it because I know the people don't want to hear from me. They want to hear from him. They aren't looking for me. They are looking for him. They want to talk to him. That's his fight. That's not mine, because more than anything, I'm still just trying to understand what happened to my daughter. I am Tamika Palmer, mother of Breonna Taylor. Thank you.
Brothers, sisters, beloved, I am home. What a journey. I was not prepared for any of this. Everything is so different. I didn't know what to expect. And I am surprised at what I remember. The smallest thing can remind you where you came from. I remember flying. Years ago, I was on the plane next to this little girl headed back to college. She reminded me of me. She even had on cat eye glasses. Everything in style comes back around, doesn't it? Oh, I could tell she was smart. Just like I was. Well, I was class valedictorian, you know, in Hamley, Alabama. That's still a big deal. I had to get out of the fields. Girls, yes, I worked in the fields, child, hard work. We have come a long way. Thank God for progress. Mom and Daddy worked hard, gave us the best life they could. No matter how tough it got, they worked. Daddy worked hard enough to build us a big house. Me and my sister Edith even had our own bedroom. Couldn't tell us nothing. Of course, our little brother Obi, couldn't keep him out of our room to save our lives, you know, boys. Obadiah. He was named after Daddy, Obadiah Scott. Good Christian name, right? Helen and Obadiah Scott, a God-fearing couple if you ever saw one. Mom and Daddy took good care of us. They were so proud of us the way we grew up, never gave them a moment's trouble. Too busy working. My sister Edith was a smart one too. She was smart enough to be able to go away to college. And when she went off to Ohio to go to school, I told her, save a seat for me. Soon as I graduated, I was right behind her. Antioch College, Yellow Springs, Ohio. Good school. Edith and I both did so well and finished right on time. Now me, I love music, so that's what I studied. Violin, trumpet. Yes, girls, trumpet, picture that one. But it was the voice I loved the most, always loved to sing. That's what I planned to do for the rest of my life. But I knew I needed to work until I could establish my singing career. So when I graduated, I went and applied for a job in the school system in Yellow Springs. I figured I could always teach. Well, I guess you know what happened. No room for a colored music teacher in Yellow Springs, Ohio. Thought I'd left that mess in Alabama. In Hamley, we expected it. In Alabama, they got us twice. Burned down our house twice. Even the big one my daddy built. So I leave the South thinking Ohio would be different. It wasn't different. In Ohio, they let me get an education, but they wouldn't give me a job. I let the college president know all about it. Didn't change a thing. Oh, it gets you one way or the other. God works in mysterious ways, right? All things work together for good for God's children, right?
Right.
I was accepted to train as a concert singer at the New England Conservatory of Music. I said bye-bye, Yellow Springs, and hello, Boston. You know what happened in Boston? Martin King. Martin King. Marty. Girls, you know I like to look good. Pretty dresses, cat eye glasses, and yes, my hair was pressed. You can be natural and that's all well and wonderful, but girl, mine was pressed and sometimes it's still pressed and I'm still a sister. Anyway, you got somebody's attention. That man gave my girlfriend a note and said, tell Miss Scott I want to meet her. So he took me to dinner. Before I could even get my napkin in my lap, he came out with it. He said, I hope I don't offend you, but I need to say this to you. You have all the qualities I'm looking for in a wife. Intelligence, character, beauty. How he knew all that from watching me walk across campus, I didn't know. But he who findeth a wife finds a good thing. Now that's Bible. I'm a preacher's wife, so you know I know my Bible. This man already knew he was looking for a wife. Me, I wasn't so sure. I mean, Martin Luther King was good looking and all, but was I cut out to be a preacher's wife? I told him, I'm planning to build my singing career. I want to sing, travel all over the world, teach music, get married eventually. And even then, I had every intention of remaining my own woman. Plus, Martin was from a different world. He was from Atlanta. His daddy was a preacher. I had all kinds of reservations. He and his brother and sister had grown up in a nice house. They used to have birthday parties. We didn't have birthday parties. Only thing I saw we had in common was his mother played the organ and I loved music too. Martin listened to me, nodded his head, said, "Oh, it's more than that. You and I have a lot in common." For he cared about the movement, cared about Black people, cared about all people. He knew I did too. And he was so charming, really a sweet man. He called me Corey. Corey. Marty and Corey. He won me over. A year and a half later, folks were calling me Coretta Scott King. What a journey. If anyone had told me how my life was about to change, the places I'd go, the people I'd meet, the friends I'd make, that was so important. You need good friends who understand what you go through. I loved Betty, Merle. Yes, Mrs. Shabazz and Mrs. Evers were my girlfriends. Because of our husbands, we had a special bond. It was a comfort to get together, let our hair down, and for just a moment lay aside the weight that was the struggle and Mississippi and marches and Medgar Evers and Malcolm X and Dr. King. It was heavy. We carried all that heaviness plus everyday life. In our house, it was like your house. Family and laundry, dishes, and what's for dinner, just plain normal. And now somebody's throwing a bomb through your window when your baby's sleeping in the next room, or your husband's getting stabbed at his own book signing, not normal. Or marching 10 miles a day in the southern sun, and as much as I like to look sharp, it wasn't always possible. I start out in dress, heels, and pearls, and by the time the sun starts scorching or the rain hits, I just throw on some dark glasses and a headscarf and go on. But you know what? We were doing something. Has there ever been a time in history like that? They saw us as dangerous. That was part of the plan. Nonviolent, but dangerous. Then came April 1968. And you know what happened. He told us about his dream. He had been to the mountaintop. He saw what happened to Malcolm, and he said, that's what's going to happen to me. I was his wife. I didn't want to hear that. We had 4 small children. Martin was 39 years old. We had our whole lives ahead of us. Things have changed a lot since then, right? Same things aren't still happening, are they? Black people no longer are being murdered for no reason, right? That is the expectation. Well, it's up to us, isn't it, to fulfill the promise, stop the suffering, stop the killing, stop the mourning, live the dream. Now, I see Earth from a new perspective. We were drum major and marching band, passing the baton in a relay race. Tubman to Truth, to King, to Obama, to every one of you. And there is much more to come. Half has not been told. In spite of everything you see, the view from heaven looks promising. I am Coretta Scott King.
Where you want me to look? Here? Okay. Just make sure the smoke clears before you hit record. Why are we here? A lot of reasons. I mean, you know, we're here because America is still the same country it's always been. We're here because Black lives don't matter here. No, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. We're here today because Officer Darren Wilson of the Ferguson Police Department murdered my son. Well, I say murder. I say murder. My son, I'm sorry, Michael Brown, you know, I still say my son because he's my son. Mike didn't ever bother nobody. He was a good kid, you know. He was proud because he had just graduated high school. What graduate do you know purposefully attacks a police officer? I mean, come on. That's suicide. And nobody in their right mind believes that he attacked that police officer. I don't care what they say. What about the news? No, none of the media, hold on, because you're not gonna put that in here. None of the media that talks ill of my son has ever asked to speak with me, to ask me what kind of person he was. They saw some big Black man and the story basically wrote itself. My son was never in any trouble. Never. But then you've got Darren Wilson with a rap sheet as long as the county line. You know, I remember when Mike was little, and his godmother used to live in the county where Officer Darren Wilson used to work before he came over to Ferguson. She said she watched Officer Wilson beat a man in front of her house while that man was holding a baby. Can you believe that? What kind of threat is a man who is holding a baby? What kind of threat is a teenager who is running away from you? And I figured as soon as the details of the story started to come out, folks couldn't help but see that Officer Darren Wilson was guilty, you know? And I say guilty. That man is guilty. What else do you call it when you shoot at someone who is unarmed a dozen times? What else do you call it when the officer who did the killing gets to go back to the police station and wash my son's blood off his hands? If that's not guilty, what do you call it when the police department takes 10 days to file a blank police report? Shit, I got family with longer police reports for traffic violations. And they spend more time in court too. No, I'm not about to talk about that video. I'm not because the video of Mike at the store that afternoon didn't have nothing to do with why he was killed. He traded weed. He didn't trade weed. He stole the cigarellos. They gave him the cigarellos. He was angry and aggressive, or he wasn't angry and aggressive, which, by the way, he was not angry. He was not aggressive. Who you know angry, smiling, or with their hands behind their back? He knew those men. But there's nothing that happened before he met Officer Darren Wilson that had anything to do with his death. The reason why my son is dead today is because Officer Darren Wilson wanted him to be dead. He stood over my son like a cold killer and shot him here. Then left his body to rot in the sun for 4 hours and 32 minutes like a dog. We have experts who testified that my son would have survived all of this if it wasn't for those 2 shots that Officer Wilson fired in his head. He knew he was injured at that point. He knew he wasn't in any more danger. And he still chose he still chose to pull the trigger again. That's why we're here today. How do I feel? I mean, all the things, but I mean, I have hope. I feel like, the people have been in the streets fighting back after Trayvon Martin was killed and Eric Garner was killed and Sandra Bland was killed and Renisha McBride was killed and John Crawford was killed. And what's that boy name? Just 2 days ago, what's that boy name? Up in Cleveland, Tamir Rice. Just a couple of days ago, Tamir Rice. I mean, it's sad to say, but I could keep going with the names, but the people are speaking up. They're saying they're tired of this. You can't keep stomping on our necks and expect us to keep taking it and taking it and taking it. At some point, the people are saying enough is enough. And I don't believe there's any way, baby, bring me my phone. I don't believe there's any way that this man could kill my son. Baby, bring my phone. Could kill my son in broad daylight and get away with it. All right, we might have to pause the interview. This is my lawyer calling me now. Hey, Anthony. Yeah, I'm sitting down. My name is Leslie McSpadden, and I'm the mother of Mike Brown.
I remember the first time I saw Medgar. Mama Beasley and Aunt Merle had just dropped me off at Alcorn, and the last thing they instructed me was to not get involved with those veterans. I said, yes, ma'am. Kissed them goodbye, and I don't think they had gotten off campus before I was out with a group of other freshman girls hanging outside the student grill. Oh, see, Alcorn's football team was always on campus the week before school started for conditioning. And that was also when all the freshmen reported to school. More importantly, the freshman girls. So they had first dibs on all the new arrivals. Well, I was leaning up against this lamppost trying to look nonchalant and sophisticated when the Alcorn football team comes by, and this 6-foot-tall, handsome, well-built man says to me, be careful leaning against that pole. You might get shocked. Ooh, girl, he took my breath away. But I wasn't going to let him know that. So I said, oh, I'm not worried. And I tossed my hair over my shoulders. It was longer then. And, like I saw Veronica Lake do in the movies. Girl, it was weeks before I realized his name was not Edgar Evers. But by that time, I was hopelessly hooked. Medgar was so intelligent. Let me tell you, there were times that we would go out to an event and I would excuse myself so I could go look up what Medgar had just said. I was so sheltered in Vicksburg. Everything was so class conscious. Mama Beasley, my grandmama, she made sure I knew about the finer things in life, like the arts and classical music. But that did nothing to prepare me for the real world. It was Medgar who opened my eyes about race pride. He's the one who told me to stop biting my bottom lip and to be proud of my large lips. He told me to stop straightening my hair and be proud of my kinky hair. It was Medgar who told me to stop using bleach on my face to be lighter and to be proud of my blackness. Medgar said that he chose me because he knew he could mold me into a fine woman. At first, I didn't like the way that sounded, but he made me aware of the injustice in the South and how we as the people had to step forward to change it. As I look back, he was preparing me for life without him. Whew. You know, these last 2 years have certainly been a roller coaster ride. The high of getting the chairmanship of the NAACP and the low of losing Walter Williams. I do miss me some Walter. He was just what I needed when I needed it. He filled that empty space in my heart. I'm so thankful that he was a part of my life. To tell the truth, I never thought I'd ever love again after Medgar's. After all, he was the love of my life. But finally getting closure with LeBeckwith. That wrinkled up old man had been free for 30 years, and I was in bondage. I carried so much hatred inside me. I am not ashamed of that fact. I am human. And that was the only emotion that carried me through that first year. Medgar always said, when you hate, the only one that suffers is you, because most of the people you hate don't know it, and the rest don't care. Mississippi was my home, but I couldn't stay there any longer. It was just too painful to be there. Too many reminders. I moved to California to get as far away from Mississippi as I could, but I was still tied to it because LeBeckwith was still free. When the verdict finally came down guilty, after 30 long years of struggle, I felt like I could finally breathe. Oh, it was such a release. And I just burst into tears. My name is Merle Evers Williams, the widow of Medgar Evers.
Thank you, everyone. Major thank you to Tyiesha, Patty, and Chiquita. Thank you for sharing your talent and sharing space with us. Thank you, Linda. Now we open it up if anyone has any questions they'd like to ask us.
I don't have a question, but I'd like to say that you four ladies have kept me captivated. Your portrayals have been absolutely fabulous. I felt every I felt every bit of what you were evoking through this screen. And to do it in this medium, just continued blessings to you all. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Benny.
Thank you, Benny.
Thank you.
I think all of us would like to say from our hearts a deep, deep, heartfelt gratitude for the work that you've done. And I know that you're going to continue. So I would like all of us to applaud you. It was
Mhm.
beautiful.
Mhm. Excellent. Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Excellent.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
I would imagine that doing something like this changes you afterwards. What have you noticed since you started playing this role?
Well, Chiquita and I actually, our presentations were written about 15 years ago.
Wow.
When we performed it at the King Arts Complex for the MLK presentation. And there's another part to it. There were three of us where we had an imagined weekend away of the widows. There was Coretta, Murley, and Betty Shabazz. And so we've been talking for 15 years about we really need to do that again, you know. So yeah. So, but I remember researching it because I think of the three widows, Murley was probably until she became chairman of NAACP was kind of she was I don't want to say in the but you didn't hear a lot. She wasn't Coretta Scott. She wasn't Betty Shabazz. She was just Murley, you know. But she really pushed herself. She's 87 years old now, still around, still kicking. She lost her second husband in 95. So, you know, twice widowed has got to be hard. Yeah, but it's fun to learn about the strong women behind the men. You know, they say, you know, behind every successful man, there's a good woman. Well, these were extremely good women, you know. I can't imagine I'm sorry, I don't mean to run on, but I can't imagine losing my child. That's a whole different thing. And I remember in our rehearsals, I'm saying rehearsals, we only did one, but
For that good.
hearing Keya and Tanisha's things, it was like, oh God, I'm reliving this all over again, you know, because it's hard. And the thing about both of them talking about, you know, this is supposed to end, well, Coretta too, we're supposed to be past this by now. And the names that Leslie McSpadden listed off, and the one line that she had about we got to get them off of our neck, I was like, oh Lord, George Floyd, oh Jesus, don't go there, you know. It's just so hard, and hopefully, you know, if we keep pressing and if more people. I think a lot of people's eyes are opened now and they're more willing to listen and see things from another perspective, and hopefully things will change. I'm done. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
We could listen to you forever, Patty.
Oh, yes, all day.
Yeah, I got my tissue here because I said, just in case I start crying.
Yeah. I think for me, Patty made a good point just now, and I texted Tyiesha right before this and said I was out of tears. Like I rehearsed so much and read it so many times and cried so many times that even in the story, I got to that point where probably Tamika Palmer got, where you can't even cry anymore. Like you're so angry and you're so sad and you're so upset. And it's for Tamika, it's not even been a year. It has not been a full year. And we're still George. I mean, we're still every day. So a large portion of the words that I spoke were hers, and they were from interviews that she did. One particular was Vogue, Vanity Fair magazine, and she described that moment when Kenny, Breonna's fiance, called her. She's like, I can't. That's all I hear is the phone. I just hear phones. I just hear that moment when he said somebody just came in our house and shot Breonna. And then that kind of, I can't imagine you were just. I mean, you haven't even heard. It's been hours. It was almost 12 hours before she even found out, before she could even get into the apartment, before they even told her Breonna was still in there, before they said anything. She's running all over the city, standing outside with reporters and police officers, and no one even, she's begging and screaming and trying to get into the apartment, and they're just not even acknowledging that. So that hit me really hard, of just being able to express that and share her words. And I felt so a few weeks ago, last week actually, I did I did a piece, poetry reading, and we were talking about ancestors moving through us to write. And it took me a really, really long time to write this piece. I wrote it, I think, in one day, because I really felt like Breonna Taylor was helping me write this piece. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know where to start. I couldn't evoke the emotion that I needed to write it. And I really felt like in that moment, after reading her mother's words, I was able to kind of sit with it and get in it and write it out.
Yeah, and similarly, I didn't live through the time of Medgar Evers' murder and Martin Luther King's murder, but with Breonna Taylor's murder and with Mike Brown's murder, that played out on television. I've seen so many interviews of Leslie McSpadden talking about the day. I've seen, video footage of her on the street while her son's body is on the street, surrounded by his own blood, uncovered in the hot sun for hours and hours and hours and hours on end. And so I really just tried to channel that. It's very heavy. I think when we had our rehearsal, I don't even know that I got through the first lines before I burst into tears and cried the entire time, because it is such heavy material. I appreciate the line that Keya shared as Tamika Palmer's mother, where she says, they want me to tell the crowds to kind of calm down. And there's a history in this country, all the way back to the Emancipation Proclamation. Literal language of the Emancipation Proclamation tells Black folk not to be violent, right? Even you're about to get your freedom, but don't be violent, right? And so the onus has always been put on us to not be violent, to be the peacekeepers, but we are not the ones out here institutionalizing violence against a whole group of people, right? And so that's really an interesting kind of weight that these women have had to bear, and that our community has had to bear.
I think I've probably been writing this piece on Coretta Scott King my entire life to some extent. I grew up in Atlanta, and the elementary school that I went to was named after Martin Luther King's grandfather. It was A.D. Williams Elementary School. And of course, I remember when Dr. King was killed. I mean, I remember when I was working in Nashville at a public TV station that I produced with this guy called Bobby Jones, some of y'all might have heard of. But we used to do this public affairs show, and we would have people come in, and Coretta Scott King was a guest in our studio. We had a chance to meet her and interview her. So I have sort of this long connection, I guess, with Coretta Scott King. And then when I started doing the research, I found out things about her that I didn't know, and was able to, when writing the piece, sort of incorporate things about her that I did know, and it kind of experienced. And this piece has been expanded, and it's been edited and back and forth. And I think it's probably where it's going to be for now. But then again, I don't know. I did some additions last night and made some changes. It continues to live in some form, but it's an honor to pay her and to think about what she represents and what Dr. King represents, and how all this stuff is still so very, very relevant, and the responsibility that we all have to live the dream, to make it real.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well,
Any
with
other?
that, does anyone have any further comments or questions? I want to thank you, ladies. I will always be so grateful for you sharing and caring and showing and hoping that we can do something maybe someday when we're all allowed to be back together again, which is soon, I hope. Everyone get your vaccines. We want to be together. With that, I thank you so much. And
Thank
I
you.
know it was so deep and
It was.
meaningful for me. I have a son. I've lived through all this, and I just can't imagine losing a child. My heart has broke every day, and I've cried every day. So, thank you for bringing this to us. And next month on April 6th, we're going to take a topic and be a little less hurtful and focus on decluttering.
Bring some joy.
Bring some joy
Yes.
and peace. So we will get a notice out. I hope everybody has a great week and hope to see you soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Hi,
you.
folks.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Take care.
Hi, Cynthia.
Bye.
Thank you.
Hey,
Bye, Benny.
Hi, Cynthia.
Bye, Vinny. Bye, Auntie Carla. Bye, Sue. Bye, Mom.
Love you guys.
Bye,
Bye. Thank
Karen.
you. Bye, Lynn.
All righty. See ya.